All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the SDR Hotline with me, Gabrielle Blackwell. Super excited to have my guest here, Ellis Stone. How are you doing, Ellis?
Doing amazing. How are you?
I'm doing amazing as well. Like, even better now that I get to talk to you.
Yes. Our conversations are always amazing. So
Yes. I would love to just maybe we start off with sharing a little bit about like who you are, what your background is, like what you're really excited about and what you're working on.
Yeah. So Ellis Stone, as the title says, I guess. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the physician engagement manager for a company called Care Access Research. It's a fancy way of saying I'm the SDR manager. So what my team does is we recruit physicians to take part in clinical trials, and we partner with pharmaceutical companies. I've been in the industry for about 2.5 years. And what gets me excited is coming in every day, learning new things and helping people grow.
Yeah, I love it. I got a question for you. How'd you get into sales? Like, what brought you to it?
It's actually a weird journey. So when I was like 17, I got a job at Best Buy, and I applied for the cashier position. They're like, no, you're going to be on the sales floor. No training, no nothing. I kind of just figured it out. And then I went through retail for a while as sales and sales management. Didn't want to do it anymore. So then I got to the SDR world, and I've been growing ever since.
Oh, wonderful. Well, hey, listen, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we got to get to know each other and that we're in this world together.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and I'm also excited about the topic.
Me too.
Right. So I think I'm just like kind of reviewing my notes off to the side here. So if I'm looking off to the side, that's what I'm doing. But the first thing that I kind of wrote down from our conversation earlier this week was this piece around like growth.
Yep.
Challenge, pressure, and like what this means for the SDR role as well. So it's like I think about being at a company like Gong and we're growing so aggressively, or even if you're just in an SDR role at a company that isn't growing aggressively, there's such a big, like there could be such a huge opportunity for people to like get into a company, to learn a lot, to develop, to also have like more career opportunities. But I see there seems to be there can be a drop off of folks who almost like don't make it.
Yep.
Like people are leaving the SDR role or are burning out, things like that. But like, what has been your experience or what are your thoughts on this piece here?
So I've had good and I have had bad, right? So I actually burned out of a company, I guess. Mm-hmm. So my first SDR role, I loved the company, really strong support system. So they kind of helped you not burn out. Then they did massive layoffs because they were trying to raise money. So I kind of took this job because I needed it, and the environment just wasn't right for me. The structure just wasn't right for me, and I tried to hide the fact that I hated it there. And I tried to push myself through it, but ultimately I burned out. And the scary thing about burnout is once you get too far into it, anybody that's experienced it, it's kind of hard to pull yourself back. Yeah. So I've had really good experiences and I have really bad experiences. So I'm trying to help people avoid that burnout.
Oh my gosh. I think there's something that you hit on just now, which is the like trying to hide the burnout. Can you walk me through like what it was that you had to hide, like, and what did that hiding process involve?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say something and share something I've never shared on LinkedIn before because I'm talking to you.
Okay.
And so at this company, hiding the burnout was me taking a shot before work. Right?
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, me doing anything possible to be able to smile when going through the door and putting on that fake face and smiling, but the whole time hating it, and it wasn't healthy for me at all. But I tried my best and I tried my hardest, but nothing that I did could really hide the fact that I was miserable. I would come home depressed. I would be there depressed. I'd be thinking about it when I'm on the weekends, and ultimately it just didn't work out. And me being burnt out, and me hating the environment, I actually ended up getting fired because it came to a point that I couldn't hide it anymore.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I've had my experience of burnout as well, right? And I didn't like my go-to, I want to call it maybe an escape or a pick-me-up or something like that. Like I had that. I want to call it like self-medicating.
Yeah.
I remember talking to my mom and telling her about what was happening and how I was responding or reacting to the situation. And she was like, Gab, it just sounds like you're just trying to self-medicate. But if I were to reflect back on those experiences, I've like sought out a greater clarity around like what contributes to that. But if you had how to put this, like what do you think was prompting the misery that you were experiencing? And as you thought about the opportunities that you wanted to have moving forward, like how did you discern like what's going to be a good place for me where I'm not going to be miserable?
Yep.
And what's not for me?
So it started right out the interview process. I lied to myself because I needed a job. As soon as I walked in there, the environment just didn't feel right for me. It might be right for some others. It was just kind of cold and unhuman-like, if that makes sense, really machine-like. But I needed a job. So I kind of ignored all those red flags and I just, took the job. And that was probably the worst thing I could have did, because from day, I would say 5 on, I absolutely hated it. I hated it. And I tried to lie. I tried to fake, but I hated it. But, after that didn't work out, going forward, I told myself, I'm going to really listen to myself and really interview the company. That's important. A lot of people don't do that. So as soon as I walked into the company that I'm in now, which I love, I walked around and I checked out the environment. I checked out the expression on people's faces and seeing if they were actually smiling or if it was a fake smile. How they interacted with me, how they answered my questions. And I asked them questions about environment and quota and everything like that. And I really got a sense of like, hey, I can be here and I can grow here, and I can make this work. And me listening to my gut helped, because I love this company now. I haven't experienced burnout yet. It's been almost 2 years. So I think listening to yourself right off the bat is really
important. Like I recognize like this is a top, like, right, I don't know, like SDR Hotline, right, initially starts off with like, let's ask some very specific questions about like raises and things like that. And like now I feel like I'm trying to get into, or the vision I think that I have for this show is more so around like, what's the mindset? What's the mentality, right? Like how can like one be like oneself, and how does that, and that's something that can be so important and so key, right, to ensure that you're stepping into environments that are built for you. And I love to hear about, like you said, all right, I'm interviewing companies. Like how, like what was your process for that though? Like this is something, people aren't doing this enough, but if there was like a 101 guide on how you would guide somebody through this exercise, like what would that look like?
So I actually approached it like I would approach prospecting, right? So when you're prospecting, it's important to listen and to take cues, right? Body language, facial expressions, certain words that they say. So when I went to interview for this company, I would ask questions like, hey, so, how's the environment? How would you describe it? How has your time been here? Okay, how do you handle underperforming reps? How do you handle burnout? How do you handle things? I really asked a lot of questions. And I tried to really look at them while they were answering to see if they were giving me a corporate answer or if they were giving me a real answer. And then I went off gut issues. So I took what I knew from sales and I brought that into the interview process, because ultimately you want to work in an environment that is good professionally, but also good personally. You want to feel comfortable when you go to work. You want to feel inspired when you go to work, and you want to love what you're doing. And that's what I was looking for when interviewing. I'm going to give a quick, hey, Amy, like, thank you so much. For anyone who's watching, be sure to check out the link that Amy had shared, something from Sales Hacker. So I know like mental health, making sure you're taking care of yourself is incredibly important to Amy. So she writes a lot about it. So I would highly recommend. And Ellis, thank you so much for kind of sharing like what the specific questions that you're asking. I go to, so this is a lot about you, but I'm gonna share some like stuff as well. I want to hear everything about you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
But I've been going to therapy. Like, well, I've like, for me, like I've like, listen, therapy, thank God for it, because there's just experiences that I know that I've had personally that are going, how to put this, but this is what my therapist said to me like the other a few weeks ago. He was like, there are a set of experiences that you've had, Gabrielle, where like this could lend me to being more vulnerable or more susceptible to being like, to experiencing a trigger or to being burnout or burnt out. So like with that, I have to recognize for myself, I go like, I'm just like, I just accept, I'm like, listen, not every single environment is for me. Like I can have the job and there's going to be another question after this, but it's almost like, I think it's so incredibly important to know oneself and to recognize oneself and to accept oneself as one is, right, in that moment, and be able to ask because that's what's going to inform someone as to like what questions they need to ask. So I just wanted to call it, like, I love the piece around like having experienced burnout, accepting that as part of your journey, and asking those questions to be like, all right, I know this is something that I can't experience. So my potential employer, like, how are you going to respond in a situation that I just might be susceptible to experiencing?
100%.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is one of the most important things that you can develop as a human and as a professional. It'll take you further than most skills. Definitely.
Yeah. I'm also going to say, like, hey, Melina, she's my girl. I don't know if she knew that, but now you know.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think there was a question that someone had actually pinged me about off to the side once they knew that we were going to be doing this event and having, like, this was going to be the topic, was how to put this. They're like, listen, I have to make a living. Like, that's the piece.
100%.
I've been in those situations where I was like, all right, I'm at a company where, I'm during my lunch break, I go on a cry walk. Like, I'm just crying, right? Like, anytime that I'm like getting ready to go back into the office, I'm crying.
Yep.
And I remember like friends and family were like, listen, Gab, like, you don't have to be in this situation. But in my head, I was like, what else am I going to do? Like, I have bills to pay. There's things I have to take care of. Like, I can't just get up and go. So someone just asked, like, how do you balance that out of like, all right, I have like, there are things that I have to do to keep myself safe and secure and things I have to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that, I don't know if it's I'm going to say it's valid, but like, how do you balance that out with, wow, like, I am miserable in my role?
So it's unfortunately, there's no magic pill for it.
Yeah.
But a couple things you could do. One, own your weekends. Own your weekends. Don't let your company disturb your weekends. That is your time. And earn them. So I posted something on LinkedIn the other day that, a lot of people don't enjoy the weekends because they actually sleep in. My advice is to wake up like you would at work, but fill those hours with things that you enjoy. Right.
Yeah.
Fill those things with hobbies, fill those things with meditation. Surround yourself with people that you really love and make you happy. So you have those 2 full days, not just a full hours of being happy.
Yeah.
The other thing I would suggest is when you're at that job, and it's a valid point, you need to make money. No one's going to take care of you, right? Think of that job as a school or learning experience. So every day when you walk into that job, try to learn a new skill or take hold of something that can help you in the future, just with the eye on something better. Because if you know deep down inside, this company's not going to work out, I hate it, I can't be here long enough, you want to develop the skills while you're there that'll get you that other opportunity. So for example, the other company I worked in that I didn't like, and I don't want to bash that company, right? It just wasn't a good fit for me. One thing they did a lot of cold calling. So one thing I did was, hey, I'm going to get as good at cold calling as I can in this company. So when I give that next opportunity, that's something that I bring to the table. The other thing I did is it was a startup. So I learned a lot of things, a lot of tools that they were onboarding for. I was like, hey, I'm going to bring that experience to my new company. So I use that as a learning ground for me. And with that in mind, it kind of helped me cope a little bit, that knowing, hey, everything I learned right now is going to get me something better in the future. So I think those are the things that can kind of help you.
I love that. Because I'm trying to, because again, like, I've experienced burnout myself. Like, I call it, I was like burned out in a glorious flame. That's the way that I explain it. Sorry, I'm like trying to fix my lighting system right now. And it's funny because like I'll talk to other leaders, or I mean just sales professionals in general who've experienced something similar. They're like, but like those are the companies where they might have actually learned the absolute most
100%
in the shortest amount of time. I think there's like, there's a bit there even where I'm like, oh wow, like that can be overwhelming. But I know like that experience, I grew so much in such a short amount of time. And I'm like, I'm thankful and I'm grateful for like how much I grew and how much I learned. I am also recognizing the cost of it as well. And so I just think about like, it's almost how to put this. Here's my question to you is, if you can go back in time, I mean, you kind of answered this, but it's like, what are those things that you might have told yourself to help like comfort yourself in recognizing that you can make a change rather than just, like sticking there?
It's hard, but I would keep an eye on the future and not be stuck in the present so much. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because when you're in an environment where you kind of feel like you're in quicksand and it's pulling you down, it's kind of hard to think about, how it's going to be when you escape from it. But, that can be really freeing, saying, hey, I know I hate this job right now. I hate this situation right now. But I know that if I put the work in, I put my head down, I do what I got to do, that there's something better for me.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would do, because me not doing that, I'm not going to lie, Gabby, it led me to a lot of self-destructing activities. I was drinking way more than I should have to cope with that situation. And I'm glad I got out of it. But if I would have stayed focused on the ultimate goal, right, to see that goal line and stay focused on that goal line will help you tremendously. So, hey, this job is horrible for me. But I'm going to learn the skills that's going to make my next opportunity that much easier and that much better. So that's what I would do.
There's something you shared. I think it's I'm going to like double click 17 times on it, which is the belief or the faith that there was something better for you. One of the things that I had to recognize in myself, and it's also something that I'm working on. Like I feel like a lot of the coaching conversations that I'll have with reps or that I'm managing or mentees that I'm mentoring, and it's like, how to put this? There is like some belief that's there. There's some thought that's like, oh, I'll never get something better. Like this is as good as
it gets. Yep.
And so in that mindset of it's as good as it gets, I have done it. Like I tolerated a lot of nonsense, and it took me like burning out and having a full on nervous breakdown to be like, I don't think this is a way to live. I was like,
not at all.
I don't think that this is the way. I was like, this is not gonna work. Like this is not.
Sometimes you have to go through that burnout to find out who you really are.
True.
You don't know who you are until you face adversity, right?
Yeah.
I feel I really truly believe that if I didn't get laid off from the last job and then get burnt down, fired from the last job, I wouldn't be in the position that I am now, because I said, hey, I'm not going to tolerate the stuff I tolerated in the past. I'm not going to suffocate my voice like I did in the past, and I'm not going to make the mistakes I did in the past. So I brought that mentality to this company that helped me tremendously. So it sucks, but sometimes you got to go through the fire to get the reward at the end. But you just got to keep that in your mind.
That's a great, sometimes you have to go through the fire to get past. What do you think? This could be like a positive spin, right? It's not to be like a positive spin on burnout, but I think it's more so, how to put this? It's more so like, hey, like you face adversity, like what, instead of like, what is it? Post-traumatic stress, it's post-traumatic growth.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm thinking of because there is the experience of burning out. I had my breakdown, and there's other stuff that happened too. Like got a criminal record, like while I was like during that time too, just like not being lucid, like I don't know where I was somewhere else. And like, there were opportunities for me to be like, woe is me, like I'll never be able to like do the things that I want to do again. And I think I had a few of those moments, but few and far between. Like I didn't stay in it, right? But for mine, I was like, you know what? There's something to this that there's something I can learn from this moment. But like, what do you think really helped you, like how to put this, like persevere and I say bounce back, but like just like demonstrate that resilience and be able to bounce back after a burnout?
So it's gonna sound maybe silly, I don't know, but I use my ancestors, right? So on my mother's side, so because I don't know my background, I'm half white, half black. On my mother's side, they were Jewish, and my great grandfather died in the Holocaust, and my grandfather escaped the Holocaust. My father's side, they weren't slaves. So I think about all the stuff that my ancestors went through compared to what I'm going through, and I say, hey, if they can push through all that, I could push through this. So it gives me strength that, hey, I would be doing my ancestors a disservice if I let this beat me. So I'm not gonna live. And then I have a saying that I tell myself, and it's I choose to win. What what that means to me is that doesn't mean you're going to win every time. That means I'm going to do everything possible that I don't beat myself.
Yeah.
I choose to win. So whatever I go through is not going to beat me because I choose to win.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I got the shiver me timbers. Okay. Hello. What I remember, after so like I had my breakdown, right? I was in the hospital, for like maybe a week or so. Because also again, like had gotten in trouble with cops, so like couldn't come out. There was just a bunch of stuff that was going on.
You need to write a book, Gab.
I know I will. I journal so much. Like that whole bookcase over there is just journals. But when I remember, like when I got out of the hospital and I would just like go and like wander around. I was living in Portland, Oregon. I just like go and sit in coffee shops and just like write and journal or draw or whatever. And go into a cafe. They have these little newspapers of local events that are happening, and it's kind of like there's weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
I came across this like grief and resilience workshop, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go and check this out. And one of the big, like the number one thing, I think maybe the first thing that the facilitator of this workshop had shared is like, just by virtue of you being here, existing, living, breathing, like you are a descendant, right? Or you are the legacy of survival. Like,
100%.
right. So whether it's like, whether your ancestry includes like, like the Holocaust or enslaved people, it's like, just think about like the journeys that the generations before all of us, whoever we are, have had to endure. Hell yeah. So and I do think like just being able to lean back into something greater than oneself. And so if that's your family tree, your belief in the universe and God, whatever else it is, like I was just thinking, like there's so many times where I tell myself, I'm like, you know what, like there's something bigger than me that like has my back and is looking out for me, and I might not understand everything that's happening, but like with that faith that's there, like the whole universe conspires for my favor, like then like if I believe in that, like it's like
then you can't,
it'll happen.
And the other thing too is, Gab, and my brother told me this. He said it's not about you.
Yeah,
it's not only about you. So what he meant by that is, you, Gab, you just speaking about your experience has motivated somebody you don't even know. Yeah. But if you let that experience beat you, you wouldn't be able to help that person. So I keep that in mind. Like, I know that my journey and my experience and me speaking about it, me talking about it, me living through it, it's going to have somebody looking at that like, yo, I can do this.
Yeah.
Protect your chance of life. So it's not about me only. Yeah. So once you step out of that realm, like it's only about me, then it motivates you to keep growing and keep getting better. And none of the burnout, depression, the pain, the sadness, you're not going to let that stop you. You're going to have weak moments, but you're not going to let that stop you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And there is something else I wanted to chat with you about, because you're leading people, and you're going to be leading more people too. Yes, at work, and it sounds like there's other things that you're also involved in too. Yep. But like, how has your experience with burnout, like how has that informed how you show up in your work as a leader of salespeople?
Mm-hmm. So, Gab, me and you talked about this offline before, and we kind of have the same philosophy. I bring a human approach to leadership. I've had leaders that were robotic and they only seen you as your number and your quota, which are important. But one of the things that I tend to ask my SDRs is, how are you doing? Yeah. And when I ask that, I'm not asking about how you're doing in terms of sales, like mentally, how are you doing? Because grown people need to know that somebody cares about them. Yeah, I enjoy working with you. I care about your success. I care about your growth. So that's the approach that I've had, because I know how lonely it can be as an SDR, especially right now, because everybody's remote, right? Mm-hmm. When you're an SDR, a lot of times you feel like the world's against you. You're by yourself. You're making these calls, you're sending these outreaches, doing these touches, and a lot of times nothing's happening. And I know that. And because I experienced that, I don't want anybody else to experience it. So I always make sure to ask my employees, how are you doing? And then the other thing I do is I do a Friday breakdown. So Friday at 4:30 today, my team comes in. Anybody else from any department could come in, and we just talk. Not about business, not about nothing, right? Just maybe about the weekend, any emotional stuff they're going through, how they feeling, whatever. And we talk about that, because I know that when you feel like a human and you're treated like a human, you can go further.
Yeah. 100%. No, I'm thinking about it. I was like, I've had those moments of like I was just thinking even this week, right? Like
Yeah.
we changed up a lot of things within the organization, within the segment that I'm in. And so with change, right? New year, new month, new processes, new programs, things like that. It's just like, it can get like, it's like, man, like I'm tired.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
exhausted. And like sometimes I'm like, not to say that I don't want to be grateful, but I'm like, sometimes I'm just like, I just want to be real for a moment. Like, I don't want to have to be that person who, again, like this, I think this goes back to kind of what we had talked about at the very beginning, which is I felt like I had to put a smile on my face to show up to work.
Yep.
So like there's like, all right, if we can cultivate an environment in which like being human means you're going to have the full spectrum of your experience, the sad days, the bad days, the everything. And like, it's super normal. It's especially in the SDRC. So freaking
100%.
normal. And so rather than people going, okay, well, like I don't feel great all the time. There's something wrong with me. It's like, no, like you're just human as fuck. Excuse my language. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
Human,
true.
yeah.
It's true. And sometimes you got to remind the people that you're leading, especially if they have a track record of success, that your failure or perceived failure right now doesn't mean you're bad at your job. It just means that you're having a moment. And what I told one of my players, like, you know how to do this. You've done this, right?
Yeah.
Don't let this momentary lapse and struggle stop you from knowing how great you are.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of leaders, and I'm going to call leadership out in general. A lot of leaders are just lazy. They rather just cancel their employees out, right? Because they're underperforming. They don't want to bring them up. They don't want to do the actual job and train them. They don't want to help them get better. They're like, hey, you missed your quota 2 months in a row. You're gone. No, it's your job to grow people. It's your job to make people better. It's your job to show them the right way of doing things. Yeah. And if it continues to happen under your watch, then you have to start looking in the mirror. So I don't want to go to rant, but
rant it up.
Yeah.
I think that's it, because here's the thing. Here's what I how to put. Let me get my words real quick. I've had a terrible person of a boss before, and it tore me apart. Like soul crushing, tore me apart, like spirit sucking, like full on dementor. Yep. And I mean, it wasn't just like the person that I was reporting to. It was ingrained in the culture of the company. And so I think there was this piece of like having gone into an environment and I forgot who I was.
100%. You become a robot or another number, and start seeing yourself that way.
It's like I couldn't see myself clearly, because all I could even with that, right? This is why I'm gonna stress on this till for the rest of my days and into the next life and beyond, which is how we are, like what we might be experiencing, like these expressions of like sadness or whatever else it is, or misery, suffering, like this can be an indication that we are not in the right place and that we're not with the right people. Yep. And so we have to be so, like, much in the same way that we want our leaders to care for us, like we also have to take care of ourselves.
Well, Gab, that's one of the hardest things to do.
It's so hard, and it's such a journey, but it's so important.
We're not taught self-love, though. We're taught how to treat other people.
Yeah, we're taught to make an income.
Yeah, make an income or even be nice to others, but we're never taught how to be nice to ourselves. And we have to listen to our cues. Like you said, if you're sad at work every day, it's probably a good indication that you probably don't need to be there. And it's hard because we live in a society that says you have to work, you have to pay bills, and your worth is determined on your position. That's but one thing that I think that this pandemic has done, it kind of did put human back in the workplace, right? Because now if I'm on Zoom meetings and I hear a dog barking or he has to grab his baby, I'm not thinking anything of it. Or the same thing with me. As of before, you might have got a side eye, you might have got some size or whatever. So I think that's what it did. But we have to remember that people behind those numbers, people behind those quotas were all human. And we're going to deal with stuff. One of the hardest times in my life was my mother. She got diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. And also a heart condition at the same time. And she was in the hospital. She actually died twice. They brought her back. Wow. And the company that I was with at the moment still was hounding me about quota, right? One of the quotes that I've heard was, you're only as good at what you did last month. What have you done for me now? Right. So that I will never do that to somebody. Because as a leader, people will go to bat for you if they feel like you care.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of leaders just don't have that. They don't have empathy.
Honestly, I feel like, yes, like I gotta say, I'm super fortunate. Like the first boss that I ever had, his name is Dan Barr.
Yep.
He set such an amazing standard for like what, like the kind of leader that I wanted to work for.
That's amazing.
Right. And the thing, and if I think about that, right, and I think about the performance that I delivered for this person, like in this role, I mean, I was getting like 150, 200%. I was 3x. I was like at 3x the next top performing rep. And I was like, I would run through walls for this man.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah,
Exactly.
I was like, I'm like, you've done so, like, I was like, it's not even a matter like, oh, you've done right by me, but I was like, wow, like I didn't even realize that someone could just like care from the get-go. Like I was so used to being in environments where it's like, yeah, it's like you have to demonstrate that you can be trusted first.
Yep.
It's so backwards in like, so one of the things that I've heard like Kevin Dorsey talk about in some of his trainings is like you have to demonstrate unconditional love, absolute love to your people as a leader. So this means like whether they're doing what you want them to do or not, it's still there, right? Whether you hit quota or you don't, it's still there, right? Like, of course, like, hey, listen, there's performance and there's performance expectations, but how you treat the person that shouldn't have to change just because they hit their number or they didn't hit their number. Like everybody is deserving. Like every single person on here, you are deserving of respect.
Being treated
bare minimum.
Exactly. The boss that I have now, right?
Yeah.
Why I'll go to bat for him. I'll go to bat for him. I was only at the job for a week, maybe a week. And my wife got sick and my kids got sick. And I told him, I said, I'm sorry, I can't come in. He stopped me. He said, don't explain. That's your family. You take care of your family. If you need anything from me, need me to do anything, let me know. Take care of that and come in when you can.
Yeah.
That made me like, I'm gonna go to war for him because he cares. And I don't know why it's so hard for leaders to do that. Why is it so hard for you to show that you care? And I think it's because you ever seen the movie like Boiler Room or Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
That's the mentality a lot of these leaders have, right? Because they think that's how it's supposed to be. I guarantee that if you lead by example, right? If you lead by caring instead of leading by fear, your people will go to bat and go to war for you because they know you'll do the same for them.
Yeah. No, I mean, big time. Big time. Wow. Sorry, that was so good. Thank you. No, I was trying to think. I'm like, I had a thought and then it escaped me and then it came back. My honest opinion, this is my theory on this, is for the leaders who have not, who do not demonstrate care for their people.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, how to put this? I don't think these people have ever been cared about. Like, I think there is. And so this, like, I'm also like, hey, leaders, like, we need to challenge ourselves to be better people. And being better people has nothing to do with building a better dashboard. Like, none of that.
But a lot of these leaders they're operating on fear. Because they're afraid to not hit their quotas. They're afraid to get reprimanded. Me, I think of myself as the firewall between everything else and my team, right? So I'm going to go to bat for my team because I know my team's going to go bat for me. So if it feels like corporate's doing something or giving us a quota that's unfair or whatever, I'm going to be the one to speak up. I'm going to try to change that because that is my job as a leader. My job as the leader is to, I call myself, I'm the lighthouse, right? So I light the way and I warn them from danger. And that is my job. My job is not to take care of myself. And what leaders get twisted is this is a service role. This is a service role. They don't work for you. You work for them. And that's point blank. And that's how you have to think about it. And that, and I'm going on a rant. I know this is about.
No, I mean, I'm over here taking notes because, I mean, there's like, I haven't read a single thing about servant leadership. I'll be very honest. So I can't like explain it. And I also just weirdly enough have my qualms with the word servant. But what I've kind of come across is like stewardship, right? When I think about like being a steward, like, number one, I think like as leaders, how to put this, like, all right, hey, this is something my grandfather taught me. And he's like, listen, you got to take your people's success personally. And so if I have to think about like, what does my own success look like? Like, what is my personal success? And so like, again, at one point in time, one point in life, I thought if I made a certain amount of money, I was being successful, right?
Yep.
And I think about how I was feeling and whatever else. I have an experience that forces me, right? Like prompts me to think more critically about what does success mean for me, and what does it look like, or what does it feel like. And so with this, right, I think like a key piece of like, you know, if we're saying, hey, reps or people who want to get into sales development positions or sales positions, like, know yourself. I think there's also like, this becomes all that much more critical and important for leaders to know themselves as well, and to do that, like that work on oneself, so that you can actually be that light versus being like the iron fist all the time.
Exactly. And we didn't even talk. We talked about it as a rep, but there's burnouts for leaders too.
Oh, hell
And
yeah.
and I think one of the reasons why, and I don't want to put anybody down or crush anybody's dreams, but not everybody is supposed to be a leader. And
Yeah.
this is when knowing yourself is important, because people have this glamorization of being a leader, right?
Mhm.
But being a leader is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of doing things that you necessarily don't want to do, but you know you have to do it because it's going to be better for your team.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pressure on you, because you're not just responsible for your quota, you're responsible for everyone's quota. So you have to know yourself to know if you can handle that. And you have to know yourself if, you know, if you're going to like handling that. But nobody cares about the leader's burnout, because we're the leader. But you have to care about yourself. You have to take the same approach that you do as a rep, knowing if the situation is right for you, knowing if leadership's right for you. And if not, move accordingly.
Yeah, that's big time. That's big time. Ellis.
Yeah, Gab.
Honestly, like, no, this has been wonderful. And like, I mean, I'm kind of checking the comments a bit, and people are like, yes, insane, right? The this whole conversation, right, is insanely good. And I feel the same, because I don't know that I've had a conversation like this.
We don't talk about this in our industry. We don't. We need to. We don't talk about burnout enough. We don't talk about mental health enough, because the sales industry is kind of a macho industry, right? It's like the top dog, the top performer, top everything, and there's no room for feelings. But we need to change that, and hopefully this conversation does.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's going to just keep on going. It's just going to keep on going. Funny enough, so I'm on Clubhouse. I've been on Clubhouse for like a month.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so there's stuff that I'll like tune into that's kind of like sales, or like it's related to my profession.
Yep.
But like I'm super duper like hippy dippy, like modern day new age witch lady, right? Like I have
100%.
Right, I have my tarot cards, I have my incense, I have my stones, crystals, runes. I just bought like an astrology tarot deck, all of it. So I like very, very, very much like a spiritual being, and like I'm in it. And I had joined this. I joined in like a class. It was something that was focused on energy work and energy healing. And so they were asking people, you know, come up to the stage and chat. And I had just talked to them. I was like, great, hey, like, you know, I have my profession, which in sales, it is very like, it's kind of like macho. It's very masculine. And then you have this like more, so like a bigger focus like outside of work on this intuitive, very feminine aspect of things. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how to blend these things together. And listen, let us tell you, like, if it is incredibly, they're like, listen, the masculine needs the feminine. The masculine will celebrate the feminine. Like, you can't just have masculinity, like, or the energy of itself. So you have to find, like,
has to have that balance. You have to have that balance. Like,
and so
I'm gonna turn this around on you.
Yeah, turn it around on me.
What do you do to help you stay centered? Like, you got your crystals, but what actual, do you meditate? Do you go for a run? What do you do to help yourself stay centered?
Yeah, like, it's like, I mean, like the crystals, the stones, the tarot cards, like, it's not necessarily like a centering exercise. There's a lot of times where, like, for me, I'll ask myself questions, right? Okay. I have conversations with myself, and like a lot of times the conversations that I'm having happen within a journal. And so like that to me is grounding, or it's not necessarily like like meditation in the sense of like, oh, I have to sit here or lay down or whatever else and close my eyes and listen to music and go off into some astral plane somewhere.
Yeah.
It could just be like, just whatever I'm feeling, I just accept the feeling. Like, literally, it's as simple as that. Where, like, for example, if my stomach hurts, I just sit with it. I'm like, okay, well, what is this telling me right now? Like, what am I being made aware of in this moment? Or if I'm having like, I can have a thought that just keeps on going, right? Like on repeat. And I can either I can ignore it. I can try and ignore it anyway. So I'm like, it's just going to keep on coming back.
Yep.
So for me, I just stopped. Honestly, I just started accepting whatever I was feeling and whatever I was thinking. I didn't have to agree with it, but I just accepted it. I was like, what do you like? I was like, this is a moment, or this thought, or this feeling that I have. Like, let's say it's doubt, or if it's insecurity, or if it's like a lack of confidence. I kind of have this image of like, I'm at home.
Yep.
And so someone's knocking on the door, and I just invite them in for tea. And I'm like, hey, like, I was like, listen,
put the gloves in the sink.
You're a guest in my home. Like, let me treat you as something. Let me be hospitable to you. Let me be patient with you, because there's something that I'm being made aware of in this moment. Again, whether it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to get more clarity on something, more often than not, it's an opportunity to heal.
No, 100%.
Yeah, and so like, if I am healed, right, like energetically or spiritually, emotionally, mentally, right, how much more can I offer, right? Like, wow. Like, so like, wow, I can be like a full and most whole expression of my pure self if I allow myself the opportunity to experience myself. So like really that it's so like whether that happens in meditation or if it happens over a walk, but I get really curious about myself.
100%. That's awesome. Like allowing you to feel those feelings, allowing yourself to and learning from them. That's hard, but it's extremely, extremely important. And I'm gonna try to do that more often. Thank you for that. That's it.
Yeah. So like I'm thinking, like it can look so many different ways. Like that act of it can look so many different ways. So it happens sometimes in meditation. If I recognize something, wow. Like I grew up with a single mom. My dad wasn't around.
Yep, me too.
And like and so I had an experience where an abandonment trigger was just
yes, all the time. Me too.
Yeah. Yep. It's like an atomic bomb went off.
Yeah.
And so I had 4 days of no work, so no distractions. So I'm like, all right, well, normally in the past, I would have just tried to ignore this. I had work, I would distract myself with work. I would I'm gonna smoke a little bit, let me drink a little bit, like I'm gonna whatever. And I was like, all right, rather than trying to brush off like my feelings, what happens if I just embrace them? And so with that, even though there was a few days of like ruminating on that experience, there was this moment where I was like, you know what? I just had to accept the fact that like every person that was in my life who did abandon me, and it hurt. And they're like, let me not try to pretend like I'm not hurt. And
that is so difficult, Gab. You have you know it's I have the same background as you, right? Single mother, so that abandonment thing is hard. Feeling those emotions, it's same thing with burnout.
Yeah.
Like you have to allow yourself to feel it to learn why you're feeling it. You have to be like, all right, why do I feel this pit in my stomach every time I think about work? And then learn from it. What triggers that? Then you got to think about, all right, is it the situation? Is it the job, or is it me? Is it something that I'm not doing that I could do better? Because it's not always the job. Let's put that out there too. It's not always preparation. Sometimes it's internal, but you have to have those conversations with yourself. One thing that helps me is when I'm having a bad moment, I don't turn it into a bad day.
Yeah.
So what that means is like you called 50 people and they all hung up on you. You're like, oh, I'm having a bad day. No, you're not. You're having a bad hour.
Yeah.
So you have to start. It's a bad hour. Right? Don't turn it into a bad day, because if you say it's a bad day, then you're going to have one. So I tell myself that, hey, let me step back. This hour sucked. It sucked.
Yes.
It sucked.
Yes.
But the next few hours is going to be better because I'm going to make it so. So it's all about self-awareness.
Yeah, there's a piece here too. I would say like there's a great, because I recognize, I'm like, great, I'm just gonna pretend like I'm not, I'm gonna stop pretending that I'm not hurt, right?
Yeah.
Like I give that example. There's the burnout piece. If I were to reflect on the experience that I had when I had experienced it, when I was like, I was bawling my eyes out before going to work, right?
Oh my
But if
God.
right, and so like I'm like, okay, cool, like let's put on our makeup, let's do our hair, like nobody's gonna know that we're hysterical every single day before stepping into work. Let me work harder. Like, what if I had just accepted, like, wow, like I really don't want to go into work, and I really don't like feeling this way. Like I want to, like, it took me being burnt out and recognizing that and saying, you know what, rather than like, I was like, let's, like, for instance, like if you have a bad hour, it's like, wow, that's a really bad hour. And you know what? I'm gonna choose to not have a bad hour for this next hour.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it better.
Like you say, like, listen, I choose to win. So for me, I was like, you know what? I was like, I've been at some places where like I wasn't excited about going into work. I've had like that first SDR role that I had. I go to bed excited about the next morning going right, and I was like, wow, like and I felt so good during that time. And I'm like, you know what? I had that experience once. I can have it again. I deserve it. I'm gonna do my best work. Like I was like, I'm choosing to enjoy my work again. And I made, and then I made the moves.
Exactly. And you got to put the work in. One thing too, and this people, I don't know why it's controversial to some, but take your PDO, like take your times off too. Yeah. If you feel burnt out and you really feel like you can't do it, and you have sick days or you have PTO that you can use it. Don't be afraid. Use it. Like, because you're not doing anything going into work right now feeling like that. Because one, you're going to be miserable. Two, you're probably not going to perform the best, right? So take that day to meditate, walk, do whatever you do, and self-reflect, right? That Saturday to Sunday day off, that's cool. But sometimes your emotions don't work on a calendar, right? So if a Monday is really bad,
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a great one. I remember how to put this. Yeah, because I'm like, there are so many experiences that I had during my most formidable years.
Yep.
Where like what you're sharing right now is totally the opposite of what was shared. So there was such like an unprogramming and an unlearning that had to happen. And again, like this is what I'm ultimately grateful for in my breakdown, which was it's like almost all of that programming went away.
Disappeared. Yep.
It just disappeared. It was just like, whoop. You're free now. I'm like, oh.
Oh, this is me. I know me now.
Like, I was like, I don't know who I am. Like, I find that out. So, so there was just like that experience. But one of the things that I've shared with like some of my reps or with the team in general, I was like, listen, like sometimes, like, listen, the how to put this, in the morning or like at bed, whatever time it is, it's just like commit to doing your absolute best.
Yep.
Right. Like, all right, today I'm going to do my absolute best, but also recognize that your best is going to could look different from one day to the next.
100%.
So hey, listen, today I'm feeling good. I had a great start, right? Got a matcha latte, oat milk, right? All of that. And it's like, I'm off to the races, but sometimes it's like, I didn't sleep well, right? Or like, hey, like me and my ex broke up, or like, hey, something happened with my family, or like whatever it is, like whatever's like something doesn't even have to happen in your life for you to wake up and say and be like, ooh, like there is a heaviness on me today, and recognize it's like, well, yesterday you might have been able to crush all of the goals that you had for yourself and you're looking really good. But you know what? Like heavy today, I'm having a hard time talking. Fine, it's not a good phone day. But like,
let me do emails, let me do LinkedIn.
Yeah, let me do prospecting. Like, okay, cool. Like the best thing that I can do for myself today is prepare myself for my best tomorrow.
Yeah, we got a really good question right here from Eric. If you want to pull it up.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what would you say to a rep that asks for PTO at a company and they push back on it?
So I would say reevaluate your relationship with that company. If you talk to your boss about why you need to do it, say, hey, I'm having a real bad mental day, really bad. I'm just not feeling myself. I don't feel like I'd be productive at work today. I just need this day to myself. And if your leader is still, no, you can't do it, then you got to have to start reevaluating your relationship with that company. And you got to start making moves for yourself. I've had jobs, and I do not suggest this for anyone, right? But I have jobs that they said no, and I still took it because I knew that was best for me.
Yeah.
And I took the consequences after. But if you have a relationship with your leader, with your boss, and he says no, even though you explain to him, I really need this, then it might be time for another move.
One caveat on here.
Yes.
Listen, I've had reps who abuse people's goodness.
100%. If your rep's not doing anything,
yeah,
and they took a PTO on Monday and a PTO on Wednesday and they're not hitting their quota, then that's a conversation. But if you're a rep that is giving its all to the job and giving its all to the company, and you're the first person that they can call on when they need, and you do what you got to do, if the boss is still like no, and you tell them like I can't do it today, then you got to review everything. But you're right. If you're a rep that's abusing the system, that's where self-awareness comes in, right? Like if why is he saying no? Maybe because I took 3 this week and I'm not doing what I got to do.
There's something there's something that I've used in the past for myself. Like what, and this is what helped me discern like what kind of like which company I would end up working with. So I actually had created a model. Like you'll probably hear Amy Volas talk about this, like a scorecard for interviewing for companies. So the first part of this scorecard is you have to do the work to recognize what is most important to you.
Yep. So
from my end, I was like, okay, cool. Like I know I care about how much money I'm making. I know I care about how much PTO I can take. I know I can care about like equity. But in the grand scheme of things, if I have like 20 elements, like 20 factors of like, this is a really good place to me, a lot of the financial, like the benefits package of it all, in terms of its importance or its significance to me, was much lower than maybe my feeling like the social impact that this company was making. I was like, listen, if we're just trying to have some churn and burn company, but we're not talking about how we can give back to our communities and like make the world just a little bit better for the next generation. Right. I was like, if that company's in that, I always know I'm going to be about 20%. There's always going to be a gap of 20%. That's what I had to wait it on. But if me personally, it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm making a bunch of money. I'm like, okay, like I'm like, for me, honestly, my honest opinion is like, I'm gonna make money. Like I'll figure out how to make the money. But this other stuff around the hardest thing to do though, is to be at a company where I feel good about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, like in who I'm doing it with. Right. So like, those are the pieces that I had to get really clear about. So for example, you're like, hey, listen, taking time off, like it's not just time off, it's like taking a mental day off. Like mental health is incredibly important to me. So I need to have those spaces and those times for people to recognize like, this is my ritual, this is my routine, this is how I'm going to show up in my best self. This is what it takes for me to do that. Or if it's traveling, well, right now travel's limited, but like being able to take time off to spend time with one's kids if you have a family. So like it's like in those interviews, like ask those questions, right? So it's like what is this PTO going to give you? Like why is that important? And if people are not about it, then that just lets you know who they are.
Yeah, and I think that also it's in the interview process is so important because you can, one of the things that I did with this company is I started in May and I told my boss, I go to vacation with my family every year in the summer to Florida. I know I just started, but that's important to me. And he said, okay, right? Because he knew that was important to me. And right off that too, I was just like, wow, that's surprising. But he realized that it was important for me to spend that time with my family. So you're right. You have to take, the thing is society makes it so that you feel pressured to take any so-called good job, even if it's sacrificing your mental health. We have to change that mindset. Mental health has to be a key, has to be one of the most important things, if not the most important things when looking for a job, when looking for a company. You want a company that you feel comfortable in, you want a company that you grow in, and you want a company that you enjoy being at.
Yeah.
And that's the thing for me.
100%. 100%.
Yes,
Ellis, I know I gotta start preparing for my next meeting.
Me too.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
No problem. This was like a therapy session for me. So I definitely appreciate it.
I feel good. Yeah.
I feel free.
Me too. I really did. I was again, I was excited for this session.
Yep.
Really excited. And I do have to do one little promo. Sorry, y'all. So for anyone that's here, Sales Hacker is putting on a Beyond Quota, so kind of like a sales kickoff next week, January 26th. And I'll be in 2 sessions, but one really big session that I'm excited about is really talking about like I'm in a conversation with Michael White, Nikki Ivy, Galen Gramai.
Nikki.
Yes, we got a crew, we got a squad. I'll be moderating the conversation, and it really is about like, all right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And a big element or a big elephant in the room is that, like, all right, hey, we talk a lot about, all right, how do we make our organizations more diverse, more inclusive? But the people who are leading these efforts, or the people who are saying, hey, like, this is what I want, like, do they actually possess like the perspectives, the qualities, the characteristics that are needed in order to see that vision through? So it's going to be like, it's going to be a good conversation.
I'll be there. I know that.
Yeah, I hope that y'all can make it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, thank you everyone for coming in. Ellis, big thank you to you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you guys. If you guys got any if you guys got any questions for me, just write me on LinkedIn and I'll be sure to answer. Okay.
All right, perfect. All right.